Fred, it's Bob and Tony here in Eastern Connecticut. Thanks for coming on, Fred.
Good evening, Fred.
Bob and Tony, good to be with you.
Great to speak with you again, and we had talked to you 2 weeks ago, approximately on the radio side, Fred, and again, thanks for coming on and being so cooperative. A little background for our TV viewers here. Fred was involved over 30 years with the Dodgers, started in public relations, moved to the GM position in the late 80s, was the GM in 1988 when the team won the World Series, and he continues to do good things today. Fred, I want to talk about a lot of it which we did on the radio side, but our TV viewers would like to know a lot of the same things about, first of all, your background. I know you were born in Ohio, moved to California, and was schooled in journalism back there and started out as a sports writer, correct?
I did, Bob. My main interest, probably something that both of you relate to, was how do I figure out how to remain in sports, the area that I love, for a lifetime, and realized that my athletic ability was only going to take me so far, and that didn't get me beyond the JV level in junior college. So I had to figure out another path, and that path was journalism, which ultimately led to an opportunity with the Dodgers in publicity, which then led to publicity director, to VP PR, public relations and marketing, to executive vice president, and general manager. So it's what I now try to convey to young people. Follow your passion. What is it that you love? What is it that you want to do? What is it that you enjoy? Find that and do it.
And Fred, as a young kid growing up in California, I mean, did you follow sports very closely? Tell us some of your favorite sports to play and some of your heroes as a child.
Well, I followed sports very closely. My first game that I saw was probably 1949 at Crosley Field in Cincinnati. Mm-hmm. So that dates me in and of itself. But when I first saw Crosley Field, it was like all of the bright lights. It was actually a day game, but the greenery of the field, right, the stadium, the smell, the sound, I was immediately hooked. And I loved to play baseball. I loved to play basketball. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. There were only 30 students in our class. We really had some outstanding athletes who went on to really achieve things at a small school level. I loved basketball, loved baseball. We didn't have a football team. And then when my family moved to the West Coast, there was no Major League Baseball here. There was only Pacific Coast League Baseball. And so as a journalism major in college, or with an interest, in my freshman year, and this is online, I actually wrote a story that was published by a baseball magazine titled "Make Way for the Coast League." And the premise of the article was that Los Angeles, San Diego, Seattle, Oakland, San Francisco could support Major League Baseball. And that was 55. That was 3 years before the Dodgers moved west.
We are on the phone with former Dodgers general manager Fred Claire. Tony, questions?
And Fred, good evening. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have you. Thanks for being with us. You ended up with the Dodgers in sort of, from what I understand, kind of maybe an elliptical way. And I'd like for you to talk about that and also about working with Mr. OMalley and what he meant to you.
Well, I had the great honor to work with both Walter Francis OMalley, the greatest visionary that I've ever known in the world of sports, and certainly the deserved Hall of Fame accomplishments, and Peter OMalley. So to have that opportunity as a young guy, come to the Dodgers and be working 14, 15 hours a day and be there with the OMalleys, be there with Al Campanis, be there with Bill Schweppe, be there with Walt Alston, be there with some of the greatest coaches, players, really legendary figures. Pee Wee Reese involvement, Duke Snyder, going back to the Boys of Summer, having had the opportunity to know Jackie Robinson and Roy Campanella and then to come right on through to the Dodger days of Koufax and Drysdale. And then once I joined the team in '69, what we were able to do in the '70s in the World Series in '74 and '77 and '78, and Tommy becoming the manager in '78, then ultimately a World Championship in '81, and then when I took over in '87 with a very unfortunate experience for Al Campanis on Nightline, as is historically recorded, then to be able to win the World Championship in 1988 and bring the Dodgers back from 2 years of being 16 games under 500 was really a credit to the Dodger organization and the people in the Dodger organization.
Now, how might you feel about if it were today and Walter O'Malley were here and this whole era of whatever you want to call it, colossal free agency? How might Walter take that?
I think back to a time when I was with Walter O'Malley, and free agency was just beginning. And I'll never forget this. A young reporter asked a very direct question. He said, Mr. O'Malley, he said, and this had to be probably in the early 70s. He said, Mr. O'Malley, what would Sandy Koufax make today? And Walter took one look at the reporter, and with a smile and a twinkle in his eye, he said, he would be my partner. And that's all you really need to know.
Yeah, for sure.
Baseball is a $10 billion business. Baseball has learned its lessons. I went through I would say at least 7 strike, lockout, labor disputes. Baseball does not need labor disputes. It's finally a lesson learned. There's enough money in the pot. There has to be a partnership between the players, between the owners, and the growth of the game. It's a very fundamental system.
For certain.
And Fred, we had discussed Dodger Stadium in general on the radio side, and it's amazing. And Tony and I were just talking about it, that it's the 3rd oldest ballpark in the major leagues, and we never hear about plans to build a new stadium or the team moving or plans to do this and that. And you had told me on the radio side that's pretty much the stamp of O'Malley too, correct?
Well, very definitely. All one has to do is to walk into Dodger Stadium and see the look and see everything about it. Again, Walter, not because I worked for the Dodgers. Really, I separate myself from that. Mm-hmm. Walter was a visionary. Walter O'Malley was an engineer, was a lawyer, was absolutely brilliant. And so the whole structure and building of Dodger Stadium was classical. You cannot find it. And what's really remarkable, even as the 3rd oldest, and think about this, a lot of the stadiums that preceded or followed Dodger Stadium were the multi-type of stadiums, maybe because of needs of the city. They never lasted. Think about it. Teams that now have success with stadiums downtown actually, in some form, followed the pattern that Walter O'Malley established in 1962. And the only thing where there's ever any discussion, if you look at it from a business standpoint, not necessarily from the Dodger standpoint, but you could make the point that downtown Los Angeles would benefit by a downtown stadium, but it makes no sense to the Dodgers or for the Guggenheim Group because they have the most beautiful location in Los Angeles.
If not in all of baseball.
Yeah.
Yes.
No question about it. And, when you took over in '87, the GM duties, Fred, the team took its lumps that year, but in '88, after you had made some very, very great moves as far as personnel-wise, you beat the A's in the World Series, which was an upset. Is today, to this day, is that your greatest accomplishment?
Well, I think it has to be symbolically. Mm-hmm. I like to think of my greatest reward being the honor and the privilege to work with so many wonderful people in baseball. Certainly with the Dodgers, but throughout the game. I really see that. I mean, when I think about the journey that I've had, I don't think about 88 per se. Mm-hmm. I think about the journey. I think about the people that I was, and so many of them continue to be associated with. That's my greatest memory, because the trophies can be put on the shelf where they deserve to be or should be, but it's really the relationships that matter the most to me.
Yeah, it's certainly indicative. And Fred, one of the things I did want to talk about with you is the way the Dodgers, at least through the years, have used older players in spot roles and big moments. I made a list: Hatcher, Dempsey, Shelby, Alfredo Griffin, Orozco. Was that your concept? Was it Tommy's? Did you work on that together? I mean, it's always worked well for the Dodgers. I just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Well, it was out of necessity, because the thing about this, when I took over in '87, the '87 team finished 16 games under 500. And we had finished 16 games under 500 the previous year. So we had 2 consecutive years of literally last place teams. So we had a core of solid players, obviously with an Oral Hershiser, with a Mike Scioscia, with a Steve Sachs. But we did not have the needed parts that we needed to be a championship team. We didn't have a shortstop. We needed Alfredo. We didn't have a closer. We needed Jay Howe. We didn't have a center fielder. We needed John Shelby. That's not really the Dodger prototype, because the Dodger prototype is more represented in the 70s, when we had Garvey, Lopes, Russell, Say. Then you only had to pick up maybe 1 or 2 pieces. When we won in '74, it was that young group of players that you'll recall, or you may have noted, we brought in Jimmy Wynn, and we brought in Andrew Messersmith, and we brought in Mike Marshall. The Dodgers this year, this doesn't get any attention. One of the reasons the Dodgers are having the success this year is their management group has now done a better job in filling those bench roles. And Chase Utley is a great example of that. What a veteran player can mean to a young shortstop, to younger players. So they really, the Dodgers now are building a team and a franchise that will resemble the Dodger teams of the 70s in consistency, and indeed maybe the 60s. They are building a powerhouse.
And Fred, looking back on the role and the job of the GM during your time there, if you had to put the time you spent over a course of maybe a year, is there any way you can put a percentage on the different tasks as far as negotiating contracts, crunching numbers, and player personnel issues? Is there one thing that took precedence over the other?
Good question. It is, and I think always will be, to do it right. It is 24/7. If you don't have the total passion, I don't see how you succeed. My old friend Sid Tripp once asked me, he says, "Fred, do you know the definition of a general manager?" And I said, "Well, give me yours." He said, "The red light in your hotel room is never off." But I think the main things, as I think back, that you really need to focus on is basic in terms of, as the general manager, the team, the major league team, the personnel there, and then how they got there. So you have to be very much in tune with your scouting department. You need to know every scout in your organization. You need to know every player development person in your organization. I had weekly calls with our scouts, and certainly our professional scouts, probably 2 or 3 times a week. I had weekly calls with our minor league manager, hitting coach, pitching coach. And a lot of this today can be done through technology. But you have to have those relationships because those are the people who will determine your success. And, you know, at the time that I took over, the world was getting more complex in terms of agents. But I knew all of those people because of my background in dealing as the executive vice president. So I knew the Jerry Kapsteins, and I knew the Tom Riches, and I knew the Marvin Millers, and Dick Moss. I knew them. I knew them when they started. I knew them all from when free agency started. So you have to deal with them. The other big part that you have to understand the medical needs of the team. We were blessed with one of the great, perhaps the greatest orthopedic sports doctor in history, Dr. Joe, one of the greatest interns who happens to be my personal physician, Dr. Michael Millman. So from the standpoint of the players, the personnel, from the standpoint of the agents who represent the players, from the standpoint of the whole development, the scouting, the player development, you have to understand the media. You have to know how to relate to the media. You have to be open to the media. It is it's a complex job, but it's the best job in the world.
And Fred, you had mentioned the doctor, your personal doctor. We know you've had some health issues, but you've been very candid about them. You told us you were doing pretty well. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yes, I've had I'm now approaching a year-long journey in a battle with cancer that I would issue the warning. This started with a little spot on my lip that we thought we had corrected with the Mohs procedure, an easy procedure. Unfortunately, the procedure didn't do what it was supposed to do, and the cancer went into my jaw. And so for the last year, I've had a operation, 28 lymph nodes removed. Cancer came back in my neck. I'm now on a immunotherapy program at the wonderful City of Hope. And this August the 14th, literally 1 year to the start of my journey, I will have a golf tournament that I'm hopeful can raise $250,000 to the City of Hope to help others who will be traveling my journey.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to plug that. Tony was going to talk to you.
Yeah, I understand there's a very neat prize if someone would like to have lunch with Mr. Scully.
Well, we have a wonderful, because of the great friends and friendships, Vinny and Jaime Hurin, both Hall of Famers, and Ross Porter. There will be a luncheon prize. This will all go online within the next week or so. You'll be able to see it on some of the Charity Buzz and some of the other sites. We have a flight to Pebble Beach for 4 golfers to play golf at Pebble Beach. The Dodgers have been kind enough to offer their field for 30 people for a softball game. The Padres have contributed. The Hall of Fame has contributed. I hate to get into the names because literally everyone I've asked has made a huge contribution.
Isn't that great?
And the great thing about those auction items that rewards the fans, the Rose Bowl. I'm on the board of the Rose Bowl Operating Company. There will be the Ultimate Rose Bowl Experience. The wonderful thing about that is people giving those donations so kindly. All of that money drops directly to the bottom line of the City of Hope and the cause to defeat cancer.
And Fred, I know we're running out of time, but I wanted to point out to our viewers that you're very cognizant about your position as far as your influence that you could have on younger people. You've done a lot of great things over the years. You had shared with me via email a letter that you had gotten from one of my fellow Fordham alumnuses as far as from Michael Sansarin, who is the president of the Business of Sports Society at Fordham, who thanked you for all that you did for him and basically told how many Fordham people are in the business. And you had told me you have a few people that you know that are working for the Dodgers right now that were under your tutelage. I know this is very important to you, and we have to give you kudos for that.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do, Bob, after Dodger days was to give back and to help students who had an interest and could see opportunities in business world of sports. So my first step was to help launch a sports program at USC, Sports Business in the Media. We now have more than 100 of those students who've gone on into professional sports. I helped to launch the sports graduate program as an original advisory member at Long Beach State. And then I had the honor to start the first sports business class at Caltech. Students who never dreamed with their tremendous intelligence, but an interest in sports, that there could be an opportunity. Two of those students now work for the Dodgers. And the young man, Michael from Fordham, who reached out to me and said, Mr. Clare, we need some help. I don't know how to do this, but I want to try to get, we don't have an official class. Can you help us and guide us in launching a sports students program at Fordham? And so now I don't know how many of those students, because of the start of that class, have now gone on into professional sports. So it's just a matter, the very reason we're talking about sports and our own personal interest in sports. Let's help others. Let's help guide others to careers that they can have and enjoy and benefit and contribute.
Tony, quick final?
And Fred, you know, it's been great speaking with you tonight and the marvelous career you've had. One or two regrets along the way you care to share?
No, well, I wouldn't have traded Pedro Martinez.
Anyone, yeah.
But you know, honestly, I would say no. That may sound strange or self-serving, but I think the thing is the motto or the philosophy I've always tried to follow is each and every day, as a athlete with not a lot of ability, as someone in the newspaper field, as someone who had a career with the Dodgers, I had a very simple formula that I followed. Give the best that I have to give each and every day. The very best, the most that I can get out of myself. And then the next day, try to do it even better. And that's all I ever did. That's all I ever do.
And you continue to do it, and we can't thank you enough, Fred.
It's been wonderful speaking with you. Thank you, Fred.
You've been very generous with your time. We wish you continued good luck with your health. I'm sure we'll talk to you again on the radio side. Fred, please keep in touch and say hello to everyone out on the West Coast for us.
We'll do, and the best of luck to you guys.
Good night, Fred.
Thank you, Fred. Good night.
Bye-bye. That was Fred Clare, the former GM of the Dodgers.